Listen. You hear it?
You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
What's that line from The Watchmen? She goes like, every day the future looks a little bit darker, but the past, even the grimy parts, well, it just keeps on getting brighter all the time. It's one of my favorite lines from The Watchmen. I've read The Watchmen a million times. I enjoyed the movie. Not as much as I enjoyed the comic, but that goes without saying, right? But I've always liked that line because we don't know what the future holds. And sometimes it can be very stressful, scary, awaiting bad news, you know. And the way we protect ourselves is to retreat. We retreat into the past. Isn't that what this show is? Retreating into the past? I don't drink. I've never been buzzed. I've never been drunk. I have no idea what that is. That makes me so strange. I totally get that. You know, I listen to these guys on the radio, John and Ken, and one guy, John said, talking about getting drunk, he's like, well, you gotta have an outlet. Everybody has to have an outlet. And it triggered in me like, oh yeah, what is my outlet? I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. I don't do anything. I'm going in for a physical, and they called me on the phone, the hospital, and they're like, they ran through all these things, and I said, I don't do any of that. Do you smoke? I mean, they have to know that. Do you smoke? Do you have any recreational drug use? No, I don't do any of that. What do I do? How do I cope? Nostalgia. I cope through nostalgia. I retreat into movies. I retreat into memories. I can close my eyes or even keep them open and transport myself through time to another place. I mean, they say, I've read a lot about what happens when you die and how people who've had near-death experiences or they've been pronounced legally dead have come back with these wild stories. And then, people want to believe that they're heaven, and studies show it's the brain. Your brain will do anything to stay conscious, to stay alive. And at the end, when everything is shutting down, the brain will retreat and conjure up whatever images it can to stay functional. We say there's a big bright light and you head toward, it could be, suggestion. We assume that's what heaven looks like, so at the moment of crisis, our brain conjures up the very images that will comfort us. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. The show's not about religion. I was raised religious. I've always said that. My mother was so into the Methodist church. We didn't go to church. We lived church. We were there 3-4 nights a week. Choir practice. She was church treasurer. She was all these committees. Church for her was how you glued yourself and stayed glued to the community. But it didn't color the way I look at things. I don't judge people based on religion. I don't use religion as a crutch. I don't do any of that stuff. And if religion works for you, I've always said, hey, that's great for you. That's great. If you need Friday night to get drunk to deal with everything that happened Monday through 5 p.m. Friday, you need that. I get it. Blow off steam, totally understand. Never, I don't judge. It's not I don't ever use my sobriety as some sort of, oh, well, I'm better than you. That's just not me. It's just my choice. You make your choice that works for you, and I will make my choice that works for me. Whether that's drinking or, hey, you're gay? That's fine. Great. Whatever. I don't care. I'm in entertainment. Everybody I know is gay. If I had a problem with gay people, man, I picked the wrong profession. I've been around gay people since, oh my God, forever. 13, high school. No big deal. But then I've always said that Generation X was raised not to care about that stuff. We only saw people, not labels. Black, white, gay, straight, whatever. Man, woman, people. Which is why I've always been, I'm honest, I've been bewildered by what's going on because the current generation wants to put everybody in a box. I heard this term, cultural appropriation, where a white person can't have dreadlocks because those belong to the African American community or whatever. But I thought we're all the same. How can I be guilty or anybody be guilty of cultural appropriation if the teachings of everybody else are that we're all the same? I don't get it. You can't have both ways, folks. And is that the long and roundabout way of just saying, I don't care what Penn Jillette calls it a gree-gree. I don't know what your gree-gree is. I don't care what your gree-gree is. Everybody's got their gree-gree. I got my gree-grees. I don't talk about them. I got ways that I deal with things that are only for me. They're not for anybody, not even for the show. And I'm very honest on the show to a point. The person that on the show is the one I'm allowing you to see. Isn't that how we go through life? Like if I said everything that came to mind, nobody would want to talk to me. And I think, and I've said this before, that's part of the reason that I don't drink, because my brain has a meter on it, a filter. And if drinking were somehow to break down that filter, I wouldn't like that person. I don't judge people. I don't care. I judge you based on your merit. Oh, you're a thief? Well, I have no time for you. You're a bigot? I have no time for you. I got time for regular people in my life who work hard, who pay their bills and take care of their kids, their spouses, their partners, whatever. And though I do not ingest alcohol, I get why people do. I get why people do a lot of things. I get why people watch sports. They're just not for me. You want to live vicariously through some sports team? God bless you. I live vicariously through movie characters, so who the hell am I to judge? In high school, people idolized Michael Jordan. I idolized Michael J. Fox and Marty McFly. So, whatever, We all got our gree-grees, right? So, and also, there's 2 episodes, full episodes about the drunks that I lived with. Forget about Don Berg. Before that, it was the drunks. Roger Dole Rogers and company. So I saw firsthand the devastating, deteriorating effects of alcohol. Now, I'm not a crusader, i.e. listen to the first part of the broadcast again. I'm not judging anybody. If Roger Dole Rogers wants to drink himself into oblivion, and he did, then that's Roger Dole Rogers' problem and not mine. And that's his gree-gree. His gree-gree was Gallo port wine. We bought a lot of bottles of it. So, when I sat down tonight, here I am, I'm hanging out in the Cafe 80s. It's late at night. Everybody's gone to sleep. I got the door closed because I talk really loud. And Rachel's like, you got to close the door when you broadcast, man, because you're keeping me up. I'm sitting here. People like to come and look at the Cafe 80s. It doesn't look its best right now. It's due for a full overhaul because we're going to start recording a YouTube show from here soon. But I'm surrounded by All the things that make me feel good. Ghostbusters, Star Wars. I got a Peachy. I got a real honest-to-goodness 80s Peachy I'm looking at. Howard the Duck. I got videotapes. I got a 2XL that my friend Felipe gave me for my birthday. Posters, pictures, all the touchstones of pop culture that define who I am and make me the person that I've grown up to be. You know? The same way people turn to drink, I turn to nostalgia. And though I sometimes forget walking into a room why I went in that room, we all are guilty of that. Why did I come in here? I'm gonna leave and come back in, and maybe I'll remember. Oh yeah, fork, whatever. My recollections of the past are crystal clear, and they're crystal clear through my filter. I listen to I'm a big fan of This American Life and The Moth. And obviously, if you've listened to those, you know that this show is patterned after that. But I was listening to This American Life, and it was about how a man and woman, a husband and wife, tell the same story completely different, even though they both totally believe their versions of it. And it's fascinating. And it was about how memories can change and we alter them, and how our brain retrofits things to fit certain purposes, you know, and points. And you know what? I'm probably guilty of it. But I'll tell you, there's no hesitation when I open the file cabinet in my brain and flip through. I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know where it's coded. You know, I know in the Mind Palace where we're going to. And today, kids, we're going to 1984. 1984 was a good year. 83 to 84, to be exact. Because that was the year I entered the 7th grade. 7th grade was a turning point for me. 6th grade, I stumbled. I got bad grades. I didn't do very well. And it was simply because my home life was complete turmoil. My teacher, Mrs. Liebengood, who I actually found on Facebook the other day. I sent her a friend request, but she hasn't posted in a while, so either something really bad happened or she gave up on Facebook. I don't know which. But it was weird to see her, like, oh, time warp. Mrs. Liebengood gave me bad grades. I got my first F. My first and only F in, what's it called? Culture studies, social studies. I didn't do the work. I didn't care. I didn't do the work. And the parent-teacher conference came up, and she wanted to prepare, because I got straight A's. I got straight A's through elementary school. So here, like, there's an F. Like, I went from the top to the bottom, and I can remember it vividly. She looked at me. I knew what she was going to say, and she said, do you want to explain to your mom what I'm about to tell her? And I remember saying, yeah, you can show her. I don't care. We were learning about, if you remember school at all, we were learning about the Yanomamos, the tribe in Africa, one of the last native peoples left to their own devices on Earth, the Yanomamos. Why do I even remember that nonsense? And I just looked at Mom and I was like, I don't care about the Yanomamos. I didn't do the work. I didn't read it. I don't care. And I got an F. My mother was devastated. Oh my God. Here I am, her star student, you know, because at this point, my brother's flunking out. I haven't even talked about my brother on this show. We'll get to him. He's going to be on the show soon. Wait till you meet Jim. My sister struggled, and you know, it wasn't really my sister's fault, because her father and my mother had a terrible divorce starting in 79 or 80. Not a custody battle, but like, she lived in 2 houses. You know, she went to his house and then our house, and he got remarried very quickly, and he had a drinking problem. So Jennifer had her own issues. and why she didn't succeed in school, I mean, I get it. My mother had actually, though, seen me take school the opposite way. I saw it as an escape. You know, here we are. I come home from school and there's 10 to 12 drunk men living at our house. Roger Dole Rogers is holding court with Hub and GW and Charlie and Dale and Terry and Skeeter and all the other Uncle Otis. All the other whack jobs that lived at our house. Charlie sat in a chair and crapped himself all day. Everybody's waiting for the Social Security check so they can go buy plain wrap beer. You open the refrigerator and it's nothing but notes. Kids' lunch, Jeff's lunch, Jennifer's lunch. Like, it was not a fun home to come home to. And listen, my mother worked till 5. So by 6th grade, I was riding my bike to school, riding it home, and we're home two and a half hours before her. So it's just chaos. It's just drunkville. People passed out all day. I mean, it must have looked like I must have looked like I was living in an after-school special. So the idea that going to school was a relief, like, I got it. But for some reason, there was that period in 6th grade where I didn't want to be home and I didn't want to be at school. And I was torn. And I saw Jennifer going off to her dad's every weekend. And I was jealous of that because he treated her better than anybody. My dad's non-existent. We're still, 2 or 3 years away from him getting shot. So he's still alive, but he's not in my life. And I've got nobody. You know, there's a reason I'm a mama's boy. Because there's no alternative. There's nothing. What was I to do? And I could remember, you know, hurting and devastating my mom. There was nothing worse than that. But you had to compound it with, oh, she's going to tell Roger Dole Rogers, and I got to deal with that too, like a drunk guy eyeballing your report card. He's like, I got a what? I got an F. And I just remember, like, even at 11, because in 6th grade you're 10 or 11. I remember at 11 going, this yutz is gonna judge me. This guy who can't sleep 6 hours without alcohol, without his body turning on him and getting the shakes, is somehow gonna hold judgment over me? Are you out of your effing mind? You are the definition, Dole, of a human wreck. And you have no place to look at me in any... The fact that I'm going to school is already bested you, if that makes sense. Like, the fact that I attend is already better than you ever did. And I'll never forget, he looked at it, and you know what he did? He smacked me around. It was one of the few times I got physically smacked around. So the lesson learned there was I probably shouldn't get any more Fs, you know, because D's, no one's going to look at D's, still a passing grade almost, you know, C, it's fine, you know. My heart wasn't in it though. My heart wasn't in school the way it was. It's hard to define other than I just felt like I had nowhere to go. You know, all I wanted to do at that point, all I wanted to do was go to the arcade and play video games. I wanted a $10 roll of quarters, and I wanted to be left the F alone. Now, this could have spiraled out of control. This could have been a young man throwing it all away. I mean, that's a turning point, right? Oh, my God. I mean, you think about it. It's a fork in the road. So you know what I did? I coasted through 6th grade. I didn't get any more Fs. I never got any more Fs. And it was time to regroup. And then something happened. And that's what this episode, here we are 20 minutes in, and we're just getting to it. Again, I drink nostalgia. I am drunk on it right now. I am seeping it in every pore. 7th grade hit, and we got a new teacher at school. His name was Mr. Benton, and I got Mr. Benton's class. I was moved out of Miss Liebengood's class, who I think had moved up to teaching. And some of the classes were mixed, 6th and 7th, because maybe there wasn't a lot. It wasn't like the way it is now, with a million kids trying to squeeze in every corner of a school, and the school has to put trailers out back to pretend that they're classrooms. These were real classrooms, and there was an appropriate amount of students going there. And you had to, sometimes you doubled up classes because there wasn't enough. But Mr. Benton's class was strictly 7th grade. I got Mr. Benton's class. And I'll tell you what, folks. I wouldn't be sitting here today without Mr. Benton and what he did for me. He was the closest I've ever had to having a dad. And it was almost immediate. Like, I can remember attending class, and here's this guy. He's a leftover hippie. He's real lanky, he's tall. He wears those little tiny Harry Potter circular glasses. He's got a full beard. And he just conducts class a little differently. He's warm. He's friendly. He's got a twinkle in his eye. And I know what you're thinking. God, I know exactly what you're thinking. In this day and age, this guy would be run out on a rail because he's obviously a pedophile. He's obviously raping somebody because he's too friendly. And you know what? Wasn't the case. Sometimes the stars align and the perfect teacher is matched up with the perfect student, and amazing things happen. And I'll tell you what, he had a snake in his class, and how it started was he told us all that every Friday he would feed the snake a mouse. And if we wanted to watch, it would be during recess. We would stay in, and it would cost 10 cents. And, the first 10 students to do it, because the mouse, no joke, the mouse was $1. So we were just paying for the mouse. So 10 of us, the first time he did it, we're like, we are watching this. We are watching this. And we paid our dime, and he welcomed us into the classroom. And he opened that cage, and he put that mouse in, and we sat there 15 minutes, and that snake struck, boa constrictor, wrapped around that mouse, suffocated it. The whole time, Mr. Benton's telling us what's happening. He's not crushing it. Every time it breathes out, he tightens so that the mouse can't get a breath. And when the mouse is dead, he swallowed that mouse whole. And we got to watch the process start. And then as the day went, because it takes forever for a snake to eat. If you've never seen this, it takes a while for the snake to eat the mouse. And the jaw unhinges, and that mouse goes in, and we watch it the whole day. We're like looking up at the front of the class, and then watching the mouse, and then looking up, and then watching. And by the end of the day, the snake has a big lump where that mouse is. And that lump stayed for a few days. And then we watched the other end, and we watched the mouse come out processed, if you know what I mean. And then it was either every Friday or every other Friday, the process repeated itself. And I just was like, we can go, I can't, speak for the other people in the class. But I started looking forward to these inside recesses, because you can go out, you can run around for 15 minutes, or you can stay in and we can have this moment. And the way Mr. Benton taught class, he brought everything to life. He was truly the greatest teacher I have ever had in my life. I've had mentors in my adult life that have taught me amazing things. But in that moment, as young as I was, as bad as my home life was, I saw a way out. And so what happened was I spent every available moment at school. I got there an hour early. I got there at 7 a.m. and I would hang out with Mr. Benton. He taught a class in game theory where you played games, you deconstructed them, and then the final project was to create your own game. And I was like mesmerized, like this is a thing? And he was teaching like how to process thoughts and lateral thinking. And chess. He taught chess how to think 3 steps ahead. And like a group of old Jewish men, me and Dave Mandela and Chris Tensman, Toby Taylor, a bunch of us guys stayed in for lunch and learned how to play mahjong. So I would have my turkey sandwich, my Capri Sun, and my bag of cookies, and my mahjong tiles. And while everyone's out running around, I was learning mahjong and dominoes. And I know this sounds crazy, like it's a kid becoming an old man overnight, but it wasn't that. It was connecting with people in different ways. And I learned like he would go to thrift shops all the time. And he would dredge up all these old toys and bring them in. And they became like, he had a prize bin. And I coveted it. Like, he had X-Wings and TIE Fighters. And he was paying, this is 1980, 84, 83, 84. He's paying $2 for these things. And I'm looking at them like they're absolute gold, which to me they were. And so I looked forward to school. I despised the weekends. Because the weekends were spent with the drunks and enduring how to mow the lawn and how to make hobo stew and watching grown men drink themselves into oblivion and watching John Wayne movies all day. John Wayne was a cowboy, and then John Wayne was a Marine and a Green Beret, and I watched them all. The only one I really liked was The Quiet Man. The rest of them, I was like, oh, God, is it time to go to school yet? Is it time? So, the only way to fix this was Mr. Benton. He came in one day with one of his thrift shop finds, and it was a board game called Dark Tower. If you've ever seen this game, it came out 84, I think, and it was a really expensive game because it had an electronic tower in the middle of it that had lights and sound. And in 1984, I think this game was $50. Now think about that. Minimum wage is like $2 something. So to get Dark Tower was like half a week's wages. It'd be like a game now costing, what, $200? It'd be like a PlayStation. Like a PlayStation 4 or a Wii U. And it's a board game. It's not they had Ataris, but this is like a big ass board game with lots of pieces. But when he got it, he was missing the tower. So he said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make our own game out of it. And we're going to decide the rules, and we're going to keep playing it until we perfect it. So, Saturdays, I went to school, and me and Dave Mandela and the guys would spend hours. We're talking 9 a.m. to like 4:30, 5 o'clock at night at the school on a Saturday. He's grading papers, and we're refining Dark Tower. And after, 3 weeks, we have a game. And we, then Saturdays were spent playing Dark Tower. We went to the mall. We bought the little lead figures for Dungeons & Dragons. We brought them into the fold for Dark Tower. And a good game of Dark Tower would take 3 to 4 hours to play. And you know what? It was glorious. It was glorious. I looked forward to Saturdays like nothing you'd ever seen because I was away from home. I was escaping into the world of Dark Tower, which was like Dungeons and Dragons, but it had a board. It was less esoterical and more concrete on the board. We would end up Dungeons and Dragons a couple years later, big time, lots of Dungeons and Dragons. But this was the entryway. This was the gateway drug, so to speak. And we played and we played and we played. And my mother got to know Mr. Benton, and you know, I wouldn't see Back to the Future for another year or so. But looking back, he was my Doc Brown. He was my mentor. He was the father, like I said, I never had. And as the school year progressed, we became closer and closer. I can't speak for him, obviously. He's not here. I don't have him on the show. But I think, like, he had never married, and I think he thought of me as like a pseudo son. There was nothing sexual about our relationship. It was just friendship, father-son, mentor, mentee. He lived in Whittier with his parents. So sometimes I went to his house, hung out all day at his house. He was an artist, and he did. I want to say that they were lithographs, but I don't think that's the right word. He did etchings, like really elaborate etchings on metal, and then he would wash them with ink and then slam them onto a canvas, and then like a giant stamp make a picture. And they're beautiful. And he was so proud. He came in one day, and one of his etchings was in a book called The Peace Catalog, which was like a bunch of hippies got together and were talking about disarming the nuclear armaments of the United States. You know, because remember in 1984, we were convinced we were all going to die. That was the year The Day After came out, if you remember that. I'm going to review that movie. I actually found it on DVD. It's like what would happen for real if there was a nuclear blast, a nuclear bombing. I remember thumbing through it. Like, I have that book somewhere in the garage, looking at his picture that he did. It's beautiful. It's different. It's art. And then he told me that he submitted his art one year to a festival in La Mirada, which was a couple of towns over. And that they had like a mini sawdust festival, like an art thing with food and pictures and crafts to buy, and then they awarded a big award. So he, this is where our story gets even more bizarre. He was a clown. He was an honest to goodness, but not like Clarabelle the clown, like a new age hippie clown. You know, he started off doing full whiteface, and he had pictures that he showed me where he would go to these festivals as a clown. And I, who was a fledgling actor, a performer, was mesmerized. Like, oh, he's a clown. He performs. That's great. You know, I was doing magic, so clowning didn't seem that far off for me. Like, I'm not a clown myself, but for one day at the La Mirada Sawdust Festival, I was a clown. He was belly button and I was little navel. And he didn't want to do full whiteface, so he just put like a red nose on and like a star on his cheek. And he could juggle and do a few magic tricks. And if you need a picture of what he looked like, if you put those little wire granny glasses on Doug Hennig, that's who he looks like. I have a picture of him. I'll put it up on the page if I remember. If you don't, remind me and I will dig it up, because I put it on Facebook a few years ago. But we were clowns, and we sat there with my mom and had roast beef sandwiches and lamented the fact that he was never going to win the big award, because they always gave the big award to a big piece of art. And I went and looked at the big piece of art that won, and it was massive, 5 feet high, 3 feet across. It was a hamburger, a stupid hamburger. And when you got closer on it, the hamburger was made completely of bugs, And on top, there was a little flag with a bug holding the flag. Like, it was the dumbest piece of art I'd ever seen. And I was angry, like, Mr. Benton should have won. But I can remember that day so vividly and feeling like I'm part of something. And there were other kids that latched onto him as well. There were other kids. One time, me and him and a couple other kids, we went to Disneyland for Donald Duck's birthday celebration. I just remember, and we went on rides, and we had a good day. And it was no parents; it was just me and him, a couple other kids. Like, you can't do that anymore. We become so suspicious of people with good intentions that the people with good intentions retreat. Because you stick your neck out, and what happens? You get vilified. That's because a few bad eggs have spoiled it for everybody. It's the same thing that happened at trick-or-treating. People don't go trick-or-treating anymore because somebody somewhere had a staple and a Tootsie Roll. Find the story. It doesn't exist. And if it does exist, it was put there by somebody they know. And we've become so terrified of people, and people like Mark Burnt here in Los Angeles who ruin children by doing terrible things to them, that the good guys retreat, and the good guys can't do anything because of what the perception might be. And thank God I grew up in the time period that I did. Because if it was happening right now, if I was that kid, Mr. Benton would not be able to be my friend. Not the way he was, and not the way that I needed him. And aren't we supposed to be, as a society, getting better? Are we supposed to be looking at the past and the mistakes that we made and somehow bettering ourselves? I think we are. And I think the news that we watch has somehow decided that fear sells and good news is for suckers. So they just report bad things all day, and we look at the news and go, well, that must be what's happening all over, but it's not, and it never has been. Sure, bad things happen, and that's life, but there's so much good in the world, and so much good in the world I can recognize because of what Mr. Benton did for me. I can remember going to school one day, and he was ticked off. Something happened, somebody spilled something, or they didn't put something away right, and he had signs on the door that said closed, boycott. And he didn't let us in. And I was like, I got to school early. And he was like, no one's coming in. See you at 8 o'clock when the bell rings. I was like, what? And then during recess, I actually had to go outside. I had to go outside. What? What am I doing sweating out here? Why are we allowed in? And I'm, it was one of those things. And then towards the end of the school year, we came to class, and there was a new guy teaching, and we're like, who are you? Who's this guy? He was like, what? Who are you? I'm Mr. Benton. He had shaved his beard off, and he looked so different without a beard. Like, if you only know somebody who has facial hair, and you only know them with facial hair, when you see them without, man, it is startling. And I remember, he looks so different and tiny, because, a beard gives you, I know, that's why guys grew beards. First off, it was hard to shave, but second, it makes you look more imposing. It makes you look bigger. It's a trigger thing. Like, oh, that guy, like when bears rear up, his beard reared up, and then it was gone. I was like, oh, he looks so different. But the school year marched on, and I got back to straight A's. And my mother couldn't have been prouder. And she knew that the reason I was getting those straight A's was Mr. Benton's influence. I sailed through 7th grade. It was the easiest school year I have ever had. I lived at school. I was in a rush to finish homework. Because the sooner you finished homework, the sooner you got to Dark Tower, the sooner you got to Mahjong and dominoes and watching the snake eat and game theory and strategy and all the things that Mr. Benton brought to life. School was black and white before he got there. And everywhere he touched, it turned a vibrant color like frickin' Pleasantville. And then guess what happened? The school year ended. And I was devastated. 7th grade meant the end of elementary school. I wouldn't even be coming back to Loretta F. Lampton's school the next year. I'd be moving on to the grand pastures of Norwalk High, where a tiny little guy like me was going to get his ass kicked. And I knew it. And high school terrified me. And 7th grade was so warm and inviting and open to me to learn as much as I could. And Mr. Benton, like I would go to school and I would reach up and open the top of my head and he would just pour things into my head. All the knowledge, all the social studies I could handle and the math and the language arts and everything else. And that was the year I even got into trouble because I didn't go to GATE, Gifted and Talented Education. I didn't go. And the principal called me in. What do you mean you didn't go? You didn't get on the bus? No, I didn't go. Why? Because I want to stay here. Well, it's not a choice. Well, yeah, it is. I need to be with Mr. Benton. I learned a lot in GATE, trust me. And it was great while it lasted. But the education I'm getting here, I recognize at 12 that I need it. This is my guy. This is the guy that's going to turn me into the man I will become through his teachings. You ever had a teacher like that? You ever had a teacher like that you recognized in the moment, not after the fact? In high school, it was Mr. David, the meanest English teacher that ever walked the face of the earth. And yet, I'm only a writer because of Mr. David. That guy taught me everything about writing, attitude, everything. Everything that you can't teach even. But we're not there yet. High school will come later in the show. Later, some episode down the line. So, 7th grade ends. And I was a wreck. And I had the whole summer to figure out what I was going to do. The Olympics were in town, so there was a little bit of excitement. Los Angeles in 1984 was like crazy. The Olympics were here for 2 weeks, and Huey Lewis was on the radio, and Wally George was on TV. And that summer, it was the last summer I was going to have as like a little boy. The last summer before girls, before all that nonsense took hold. And at the end of the school year, Mr. Benton gave me the snake. He gave me the boa constrictor, and I dutifully fed it every week. My mother, I don't think she was too thrilled about it, but what are you going to do? He gave me a cage, a big glass aquarium on a stand, octagon shape, not a rectangle, octagon. And I had the snake in there, and every week I would go buy a mouse and I would put it in there. And then unfortunately, the snake caught a cold. I know that sounds weird, but he was sitting there with his mouth open all day. And I went to the pet store, and I was like, there was a pet store that only had reptiles. It's where Mr. Benton got all the snakes. It's where he got the mice. So I was like, and this is another weird thing of being a kid. I will tell this, and your brain will go, oh my God. You ever, when you were a kid, try to tell your mom where something is, but you don't drive, and you don't know streets. So my mom and I got in the car, and I was like, I know where this reptile place is. And she was like, well, where is it? Well, we just have to drive. And we drove for like 30 minutes, and eventually I said, oh yeah, there's the Burger King, and there's the 7-Eleven, and you turn here, and there it is, and it's in a strip mall, and it's that little tiny store. And it was like, oh my God, I found it. But when you're a kid, you don't think about that. And I mean, there's no cell phone. In the backseat, there was a Thomas guide. That's not going to help me out. At home, there's a phone book. That's not going to help me out because I don't know the name of the store. But, I just remember that moment of, driving around. I kind of know where this is. Almost like, Sherlock Holmes is in the trunk of the car and he's like, well, there was a bump here and we turned right. And I remember that. Oh, there it is. So I go in and I go, hey, my boa constrictor, his mouth is open all day. And the guy goes, oh, he's got a cold. That's what snakes do when they got a cold. What can I do? He's got to ride it out. And you know what? He died. The snake died. I felt terrible. But even the pet shop guy was like, there's nothing you can do. If the snake gets a cold, he gets a cold. Should I turn the heat up? Now, he had a hot rock. Those rocks that you plug in and he would stay on the hot rock. He goes, no, it's a virus. The snake got a virus. What are the chances of that? I'm sure now there's probably something you can shove in a mouse or something and the snake eats it and the snake is cured of the cold. But, in 1984, what are you going to do? So the snake died. And, I was left with this octagon aquarium. So I sold it. My mother put an ad in the recycler. A guy came over and he gave me $50 and he took it away. And I went to Best Products across from Cerritos Mall. It's not there anymore. Doesn't even exist. And I bought a lot of Star Wars toys with that $50. Didn't think nothing of it. And so what happened was high school came and Mr. Benton moved away. He didn't teach at Lambton anymore. He moved back to where he loved to be, which was Seattle, Washington. And we wrote postcards back and forth a lot. And high school was tough. I'll do an episode. It was really tough until, everything's tough until you find your footing. I found my footing in drama. Thank God drama came to me. But it was tough finding your footing. So, at the end of the 8th grade year of high school, I actually got on a plane and I flew to Seattle and I spent 2 weeks with Mr. Benton. I mean, that sounds crazy, right? That sounds crazy. What parent would do that? Well, I'll tell you what parent would do it. A parent like my mom, who saw that this guy meant more to me than anything in the world at that point. I was lonely. I had friends, but all you can do is spend all day at somebody else's house. The drunks are still at my house. We're right in the weird transition period between the drunks and Don Berg. We're right in the middle. So I went to Seattle for 2 weeks, and I had the time of my life. We went thrift shopping. We watched old movies. He taught me how to eat a can of tuna. I'd never eaten tuna in my life before, and he taught me to use the can opener, leave the lid, squeeze all of the water out of it, carefully take the lid out, and you have tuna left in the can that's fit to eat, that's not watery. And I ate... he had to go to work. I don't know, what did he do? I think he was still a teacher, and that he would go off sometimes during the day in that 2 weeks and work at the district, to get ready for the school year. So I would stay home all day, and I would eat cans of tuna and sourdough bread and watch Star Trek on TV, the original series. It was where I really started to watch Star Trek. It was like, oh, this is on. I gotta watch this. This is cool. There ain't no more Star Wars. He dated this woman, Kathy, and I watched him date this woman. And then, oh my God, this is the funniest story. Oh my God. So I yawned in the middle of the night one night and a moth flew in my mouth. Oh my God, I'll never forget that. I can remember it vividly. So, the 2 weeks were about to end, and I remember we were sitting at his dining room table. We're having dinner. He wasn't wearing his glasses anymore, and I asked him about it. I said, "You're not wearing your glasses anymore?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you wearing contact lenses?" He said, "No, I'm doing these exercises that make your vision better." I thought he was crazy, because at that point my eyes were getting pretty bad, and I was almost in glasses, and I was lamenting the fact that I couldn't see very well anymore. I had to get right up on things to see them. And while we were eating, he brought up the fish tank. And I said, "Oh, yeah, the fish tank." And he asked where it was. And I said, "Oh, I sold it." And he goes, "Oh, you probably owe me some money then." And I remember just like, what? You probably owe me some money then if you sold the fish tank. It was my fish tank. And I just remember thinking like, oh, I spent the money on Star Wars toys. I don't have the money. And I remember at that moment feeling really awkward. Like he's asking, like, we don't have any money. My family's poor. I mean, we're poorer than poor. My mom works hard and supports 15 or more people at a time. And we make spaghetti. We make enough to feed a summer camp's worth of people. I don't have any money. And to him, it probably meant nothing. It was just conversation, and it came out his mouth and was absorbed, and he never thought about it again. But I did. And I felt immense guilt because I sold his fish tank and I didn't have any money to give him. And I just remember like, thank God I'm going home the next day because I don't know what to do. I don't have money. My mother sent me with $20 for 2 weeks because Benton was taking care of everything. And by this time I was calling him Mark. And I told Mark, I don't have any money. And I don't remember clearly. I don't think he ever brought it up again. But you ever have somebody bring something up and it like gets, I mean, like the hypodermic needle in Pulp Fiction, it goes through the breastplate right into your heart. You're like, oh, I don't have any money. So when I got back to California, I thought, what am I going to do now? I don't have any money to send him. I mean, I'm years away from even getting a job. I can't ask my mom for $50. She'll kill me. So what do you do in that instance? What do they say? If you don't like somebody and you never want to see him again, loan him $100. So the postcards between us became farther and farther apart. And then one day you just stop writing. And your current life takes over. And I'm not blaming the $50 aquarium. I'm just saying that even now, like, I still have guilt. I can remember that conversation. Like, I don't have the money. And people move. And they move on. And though you cling to them, they slip through your fingers. And I have spent the last, every once in a while, ever since social media, ever since Facebook became a thing. Because remember classmates.com? God forbid you ever register with them. They would send you an email every 30 seconds trying to get your money. I went on to classmates.com when they were a thing. Couldn't find him. And I search all the time on Facebook. And I can't find him. The problem is there's an English actor named Mark Benton, and anytime you put his name in a search engine, that's really all you get. So I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. He'd probably be in his 60s now. It's not too old. A lot of people I know in their 60s are in better health than I am. But I don't know where he went. And I didn't have him during the Don Berg years. I had nobody. I went back to, I had friends, thank God. I had my friends that kept me going. And drama. I told you drama saved me. Drama saved me during the Don Berg years. But I've looked up addresses, search engines. I can't find Mr. Benton. And I would, oh my God, I would give anything to see him right now and to tell him what he did for me. And like I said on a lot of shows here, you don't get a second chance. Once somebody is dead, you've lost all chances to tell them anything you needed to tell them. I don't know whether he's alive or dead. That eats at me. I mean, I wish I could just know. If he was alive, I would call him in a second. And I would, oh my God. If he's in Whittier, I would drive right now. I would knock on that door. I still have Dark Tower and all the pieces. We could set it up and play. We didn't have the tower, the little plastic one. We found one at a thrift store. I think it's here in the cafe. I think it's here somewhere in the cafe. It's one of my prized possessions. It is, for us, the Dark Tower. And all the memories that go with that, and all the little figures, and watching Stranger Things and seeing the Demogorgon be one of my favorite figures from Dark Tower. I went searching. I don't have it. It's very expensive now. I have every other D&D figure I still have. I don't know. We traded a bit at the end, and he took some, and Mandela took some, and I got a whole bunch. I still have mine. But that's the regret, folks. He's not around. I can't ask him questions, as an adult. I can't say, you know what, here, I'll do it on the show. I dedicated one of my books to him. I mean, he is such an important figure in my life. Here I am in the Cafe 80s. It's almost midnight. I work tomorrow. I don't care. This is important. Mark Benton, my 7th grade teacher. I wouldn't be anywhere near the solid built person that I am today without your guidance. You taught me that you don't have to grow up, that you can cling to the things that make you happy, even if other people tell you you're too old for them. In one of the darkest times of my life, you taught me to smile. I don't know where that picture is of me as a clown with him. I wish I could find it. I'm going to clean the garage out just for that picture. I'm going to find it. It's in a book. It's in somewhere. And I can remember it in my head. I looked so happy on that day. Because he was proud of me, and I didn't have that kind of acceptance from a father figure ever. My father figures were the opposite. They were not role models. They were everything that you shouldn't do or become ever. They were cautionary tales. I spent every waking minute at school, 7th grade year. Mr. Benton was my hero. The most important father figure I had growing up. It was the greatest year growing up. Because the passages before it and the passages after it were so bad. And so dreary. And this guy just... He showed me there was magic. And it was just by being my friend. And he probably put himself at risk doing it. You couldn't do it today. Nobody would stand for it. Oh, he's got ulterior motives. Now always be wary of the guy. It's okay. Sometimes a guy's just your friend. I miss him so much. I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. But not having one more conversation with him is a pretty big one. I mean, I've talked about how my mom died. I didn't get to ask her freaking anything. If there's a chance that this guy's out there, oh my God. If anybody has access to any extended, deep search engines, Mark Benton with a K, M-A-R-K, Benton, B-E-N-T-O-N. He was a teacher at Loretta F. Lampton School, 1983 to 1984. He was a clown. He was an artist. He did etchings. You'd think with that kind of information I could find a guy, but he ain't on Facebook. And I remember the book 11/22/63 about the Kennedy assassination and the time traveler. And when he comes back and he doesn't know if the love of his life is alive and he doesn't want to sit down at that search engine and type her name in. I know that feeling. Because every time I sit down to try to search and find this guy, part of me is like, you're going to find out, Jeff, that he's dead. And then what are you going to do? Well, then I'm going to have a big long cry. I'm going to move past it. Because like Schrodinger's cat, he's both alive and dead at the same time because I don't know. But I am eternally thankful for the guidance that he gave me at the time I needed it. And damn those drunks for ruining my home life. Oh, they're funny stories, but they weren't fun to live through. And you know what? To all the teachers out there who go the extra mile and talk to kids on their level and show them that even if their home life is terrible, education and guidance can help them. I salute you, because it all began with me with Mr. Benton. And in another timeline, I would have become a teacher. I mean, that's how much the guy meant to me. The greatest role model I ever had. I've had others since. I've had amazing people who've taught me how to act and write and be creative and stand up for myself and fight the good fight. And I'm not discounting any of those people. We are the sum of all of our travels. And when I look back, that's the guy. I'm depressing the crap out of myself. I feel so bad. I feel so hollow. Because I can't close this chapter of what this guy did and everything. I can't. I'm stammering at the end. That's not me at all, so I'm going to wrap it up. Sorry if I bored you on this one, man. If you guys are listening to the end, I applaud you. This is a weird episode, but aren't they all? If I just reviewed movies every week, we'd all get pretty bored. I implore you, everybody listening, if you had a Mr. Benton in your life, find them. Tell them. Tell them they made a difference. Tell them that Though they thought they were just going through the motions and doing the right thing, you on the other end saw and felt so much more than they thought they were giving. People need to hear that. That's what makes us better people. And isn't that the journey to become a better person? Teachers just go about their life. They don't know. I mean, Mr. Grandpre from Gates, she didn't know what she meant to me. When she showed up at the premiere of my high school play, I was floored. She really cares. Miss Fallon, too. I even know their names. What's wrong with Miss DeFazio? Oh, my God. Mr. Benton wasn't there. He'd already moved on to Seattle. He wasn't going to fly in. God, I wish he had. So, hey, I've got a goal. Find Mr. Benton. Find that guy before it's too late. I raise a glass. I'm drinking water here. I got the final drink here. I raise a glass to all the Mr. Bentons of the world. God bless you. You make the world a better place. And that's why we're here. Go do something great today. Forget about whatever is bothering you. And for one moment, bask in the greatness that somebody saw in you. Mr. Benton saw in me not a scruffy kid from a crappy home. He saw a guy who has imagination and unbridled energy. And he was like, we're going to harness that. We're going to create this game, Dark Tower. And we did. And we wrote stories and we made other games. And he was like everything you've seen from Dead Poet Society to the episode where Lisa's teacher is Dustin Hoffman. Mr. Holland's Opus, right? How often do we get to live that kind of movie? But then, like I'm saying, haven't we all? Hasn't everybody had that clear moment of like, man, this teacher has no idea how far into my soul they are reaching. And I had crappy teachers. High school, man, some teachers were asleep. I had a teacher in high school who was drunk. I am not kidding. We will get to all that in a future episode. Mr. Benton, if you're out there, if you're listening, we're going to find you. I found Don Berg. I had him on the show. If Mr. Benton is alive, we're going to find him. And we're going to look him in the eye and tell him everything that was said on this episode. And I'm probably one of 100 or more kids that feel the same way about that guy. God damn the teachers. Aren't they great? You think you're sitting there learning nonsense, and instead you're getting a life lesson every day. Never take it for granted. Oh, I gotta go. I'm exhausted. I'm sweating. And not because it's hot. I'm just exhausted. I have opened my brain and spilled everything out, and now I gotta spend 45 minutes putting it all back together, like the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. Hey, thanks for enduring this episode. I am Jeff Tucker. I call myself The Voice for some reason. And the show you're listening to live from the Cafe 80s is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?